Good evening, everyone. Today we're looking at a performance management, and our topic will be introduction to investment appraisal. This topic is a key topic when it comes to performance management. When you talk about variance analysis, you talk about budgeting, you talk about capital budgeting. So this particular capital budgeting, which is the same as investment appraisal, is a very important topic in performance management. We'll look at past questions because I've actually set question on this topic one, which is May 2016. So by the end of this topic, we will be able to look at that question to see how the question was loaded with different or numerous requirements. So when we talk about investment appraisal, we're talking about how will a company appraise a particular project they want to invest on, if the project is viable or not, if the project is worthwhile or not. There are different methods in which you can appraise a project by a company. So at the end of this topic, we should be able to look at those different appraisals method. Now, what is capital expenditure? What do you mean of capital expenditure? Now, obviously, capital expenditure is spending on non-current assets such as building, equipment, or investing in a new business. That is capital expenditure. When a company want to purchase a non-current asset, want to purchase a building, you have to assess if that building will be worthwhile or not. If that building will generate income, or if the company will not actually incur loss on that particular investment. A company want to purchase a particular company, as a capital expenditure. So you must ascertain the financial viability of that business, if to invest in it or not. Capital expenditure initiatives are often referred to as investment projects or capital projects. They can involve just a small amount of spending, but in many cases large amount of expenditure are involved. Capital expenditure is always entail large amount of expenditure. That is the capital expenditure. Now, what is investment appraisal? Investment appraisal is the evaluation of proposed investment projects involving capital expenditure. The purpose of investment appraisal is to make a decision about whether the capital expenditure is worthwhile and whether the investment project should be undertaken. So you have to know if the expenditure is worthwhile, if you should undertake in it or not. You have to ascertain the project. You have to evaluate the project to know if it's worthwhile or not. That's enough for the investment appraisal. What is capital budgeting? What is the capital budgeting? The capital budgeting is the planning of expenditure whose returns exceed 1 year. It is the process of deciding whether or not to commit resources to a project whose benefits would be spread over several time period. That's capital expenditure. When you want to invest in a particular project or a particular equipment in which the return from that project or from that asset will be more than 1 year, we're saying that project is a what, or that equipment is a capital expenditure. When you plan that, okay, I'm planning to invest in a particular project or a particular business or a particular asset, and when you plan to do such, and the return from that project or business or equipment will exceed 1 year, we are saying is a capital budgeting or is a capital expenditure. Now, investment appraisal so investment appraisal and capital budget. Investment appraisal therefore takes place within the framework of capital budget and strategic planning. Now, it involves, they may ask us in the exam, state the process of investment appraisal or the procedure for investment appraisal. Because why? Generating capital investment proposal in line with the company's specific objective. And before the process of investment appraisal is that you must ascertain the objective of the company. So you must ascertain if that asset will generate returns, or the objective of that investment is in line with the company strategic objective. Two, you have to forecasting relevant cash flows related to the project. Before you can appraise the project, you must forecast the relevant cash flow. What are those inflows that are relevant to that project or that equipment? Three, evaluating the project. You have to evaluate the project. Four, implementing projects which satisfy the company's criteria for deciding. So you have to implement that project that meets the company's criteria. That meets the company what criteria. Five, monitoring the performance of investment projects to ensure that they perform in line with expectation. So you have to monitor the performance of investment projects to ensure that they perform in line with the. So this is the last point is monitoring. So you have to monitor. Now the method of investment appraisal. What are the methods of investment appraisal? There are two methods of evaluating a proposed capital expenditure project. Any or all of the method can be used, but some methods are preferable to others because they provide a more accurate and meaningful assessment. The two methods of appraisals are now. There are two major methods of appraising a proposal or a capital expenditure. It's either we use the traditional method or the discounting cash flow method. So there are the two major methods, which is the traditional method or discounting cash flow method. Now, under the traditional method, they all have different types. Under the traditional method, we have the accounting rate of return, which is the ARR method, and we have the payback method. We have the accounting rate of return and the payback method. For the discounting method, we have the net present value (NPV), and we have the internal rate of return, the IRR, and we have the profitability index. This particular method, I can see is part of our syllabus for PM. Why the last is a modified internal rate of return (MIRR). This is advanced. It's not part of our syllabus for PM, but I explain a little and give us the formula to do so. Now we also have under the traditional method. We also have under the discounted cash flow method. We also have discounted payback method. Though this is not part of our syllabus, but you should note that we have a discounted payback method. Now let's look at the accounting rate of return (ARR), the method. Let's look at the ARR method. Now the accounting rate of return method requires the addition of all the earnings after depreciation and dividing them by the project economic life. Now when you want to do accounting rate of return, you must ascertain the earnings, the profit, which is the profit after depreciation. That means if you have a particular project or a particular asset in which you will use for 5 years, you have to ascertain the profit for the 5 years. What the profit for the 5 years? That means after the profit, after the profit, which is the gross profit minus depreciation, give us the accounting profit. Then the normal accounting profit, which is the profit that will be stated in our profit or loss statement. That particular profit, then we will now look at it, divide it in the number of the useful life of the asset. So that asset is for 5 years. We divide the profit for 5 years. That means year 1 to year 5 profit. We divide it by 5. We then get the accounting profit, which is the average profit. The essential features of now we should remember that this ARR is similar to our rules, which is return on capital employed, is very similar. The essential features of ARR is that it is based on accounting profit. So you should know the difference between all these methods. ARR is based on accounting profits, and the accounting value of assets employed, and accounting value of assets employed, which is the book value, the carrying amount, which is the carrying amount. So how will you know if a project in which you appraise using ARR, how will you know if you will take the project or you will reject the project, if it's viable or not? How will you know? Now, which leads us to decision rules. What are the decision rules for capital investment appraisals? Using the ARR method is that a capital project meets the criteria for approval if it exceeds ARR, if its expected ARR is higher than a minimum target ARR or minimum acceptable ARR. Now, for you to use ARR, the company will have a criteria, its own return that they are expecting for each project they embark on. Now, that percentage is that return. By the time you calculate the ARR from that project, if it's higher than the company's own ARR, which is the company's own ARR, which is the minimum acceptable ARR, then you say the asset is acceptable, is viable. Now, what is the formula for doing ARR? The formula for ARR is the average profit over average capital employed times 100%. Is average profit over average capital employed times 100%. Now, this is the major. This is the best way of calculating ARR. And the average capital employed, it must be average profit over average capital employed. Now, where the average capital employed, no, the average profit, as I've explained previously, is that you are going to calculate the profit, which is the accounting profit of that project for the useful life of that asset or for the project. Then you divide it by the number of useful life, which will give us the average profit. Why the average capital employed will be the initial cost of equipment, which is the initial cost. Okay, the equipment. What is the initial cost? The cost incurred. Then you add the residual value, which is the scrap value, divided by 2. Then you add working capital. In most cases, when you are giving in an exam, you are giving working capital, then you should add the working capital to arrive at your average profit. But when there is no working capital, you can use the initial cost of equipment plus residual value divided by 2. But where there is no residual value, you can use only the initial capital employed, which is the initial cost of equipment, as your average capital employed or your capital employed. Now, what is the benefit or the advantage of using ARR? The advantage of ARR. It is very easy to calculate. ARR is very easy to calculate. It's very, very easy to calculate. So you should put it down. Easy to calculate. One of the advantage of ARR to others. By the time we continue, you see that it's easier than others. 2, it takes savings into account over the entire economic life of the project. You find that it takes savings, it takes the return, it takes all the return of the economic life of that project or that asset. That means ARR uses the total return from that project. Unlike payback period does not use total return. It uses the return up to the date of payback. That is when payback period. That is how we calculate payback period. But for ARR, it uses the entire returns of the project over the useful life of that asset. Number 3, it embodies the concept of net earnings, which is very vital in appraisal of a project. You look at it, ARR uses net earnings, which is our net profit, and which ARR uses depreciation as the criteria to calculate our profit. But when you talk about payback period does not use the depreciation. payback period does not use it in the description. It's talking about the actual cash that will be received, not the accounting profit, but the cash that will be received. Now, what is the disadvantage of ARR? Disadvantage of ARR. So one, it is based on accounting profits and not cash flows. Investment decisions should therefore be based on cash flows and not accounting profits. Yes, that is one of the limitation of ARR, because as we know that accounting profits is fictitious. Accounting profit is not an actual profit, because accounting profit includes notional items that does not warrant cash, and accounting profit can easily be misled. That's the reason why we said accounting profit is not a criteria for you to know if a business is doing well or not. Now, two, the ARR method ignores the timing of the accounting profit. Now, the ARR does not look at the timing or how the profit is coming. Is it that the profit is coming? Is it once? Is it that the first year it will come high, the second year it will come low? Does not look at if the fluctuation in the profit. So it is the wrong mind. You just look at the entire profit, in which what people look at the timing, but the timing is very useful. Let's imagine you have a project, and the project will use 20 years, and the earnings at year 1 to year 5 or to year 10 is very insignificant, very small. How will you recoup your investment? How will you have money to invest on that project? That is why ARR is not good, because it's not talking about the timing of the profit. Third, the ARR is a percentage return, relating the average profit to the size of the investment. It does not give us an absolute value or absolute return. When we say ARR is a percentage, our answer will be a percentage. Our percentage does not show an absolute figure. Unlike our payback talks about a particular amount you're expecting, not a percentage on the investments. Now let's look at a particular illustration on this ARR. So a capital project would involve the purchase of an item of equipment costing 240,000 naira. The equipment will have a useful life of 6 years and would generate cash flows of 66,000 naira each year for the first 3 years, and 42,000 naira each year for the final 3 years. That means the project, the equipment will generate 60,000 naira for the first 3 years, then another 42,000 for the next 3 years. The scrap value of the equipment is expected to be 24,000 naira after 6 years. And our scrap value, which is our residual value, will be 42,000 naira after 6 years. And additional investments of 40,000 naira in working capital would be required. That means we also have a working capital of 40,000 naira. The business currently achieves a return on capital employed as measured from the data in his financial statement of 10%. Now the business is on, which is the minimum acceptable ARR or return for the company is 10%. That means if you calculate any ARR for any project, if they are above 10%, that means that project is worthwhile. We can accept the project. But if it's below the 10%, it means the project is not worthwhile. We should reject the project. Now you are required. Calculate the ARR of the project using the initial cost of equipment to calculate capital employed. Now, so you use the initial cost of equipment to calculate capital employed. B. Calculate the ARR of the project using the average cost of equipment to calculate the capital employed. Using the average. Use the average. Then C. Calculate suggests whether or not the project should be undertaken on the basis of its expected ARR. Now, when we say using the initial cost of equipment, the initial cost of equipment means that the initial cost of equipment means that you are using the initial cost of equipment, which is the 240, which is the initial cost, which is the cost of that equipment. Then we will now add working capital to make the initial cost of the equipment. So when you ask for using the initial cost of the equipment, you remember that the initial cost of equipment is only the initial cost, which is the total cost. Don't add the residual value. It's just the initial cost. It's not average. Average means the initial cost plus the residual value divided by 2. That is average. But when you have working capital, you must add working capital to it. That means if you are using the average, after you divide it by 2, after you divide the initial cost plus the residual value divided by 2, you must add working capital to it to form the average. But if you say the initial cost, it must be just the initial cost. Don't add the residual value. They add the working capital to it to form the initial cost. So the formula for this will be our average profit over the initial cost of equipment times 100%. Now, how do we get our average profit? Let's look at illustration. An average profit is very simple. To get our average profit means the returns we are getting minus our depreciation. Now that's how we arrive at our average profit. And how do we get our profit after depreciation? Is the total profit, which is from year 1 to year 3 is 6,000. Then we say year 1 to year 3, which is 3 years times 6,000, give us more than 98,000. Then we add year 4 to year 6, which is year 4, year 5, and year 6, another 3 years times those returns from that year, which is 42,000. Then we have 126,000. When you add it together, it will give us 324,000. Then you will now compute the total depreciation for that asset. Now the total depreciation for that asset is 240,000. How did I get 240,000? When you divide 240,000 divided by 6, then you will get the total depreciation. Then you minus your residual value. I'm 240,000 minus 24,000, which is our residual value, is our total depreciation for the 6 years. But remember that in accounting, your total depreciation for an asset equals the total cost of that asset. Because at the end of the year, remember in accounting, the assets will become nil after you minus your depreciation from the kind amount. At the end of the year, become nil. That means and the total depreciation for that asset equals the total cost of that asset. But because we have a residual value, you must less the residual value. So by the time you less the residual value, you have 216,000. When you minus it, you have 108,000. Then divided by 6. Then divided by 6. Then divided by 6. Our answer will be 18,000. Answer is 18,000. So our 18,000 is our average profit. Is the total profit for that asset minus the total depreciation of that asset divided by the useful life is your average profit. Is your average profit. So our initial capital employed is our initial cost of the assets plus our working capital So that is how we arrive at this 6.4%. 6.4%. But B say calculate the ARR of the project using the average cost of equipment. Now B, pardon me, sorry that I did not put the heading. Sorry. It's a calculation of ARR using the average capital employed. That's what I want to do now. Now, how do you get our average capital employed? We already know our annual average profit, which is 18,000 from the previous calculations. Then our average capital employed is our initial cost plus residual value divided by 2 plus our working capital. Very simple. So our initial cost is 240 our initial cost is 240,000 plus our residual value will give us 264,000. Then 264,000 divided by 2 will give us 132,000 plus our working capital, which is 40,000, will give us 172,000. When you put it under the formula times 100%, we have 10.5%. 10.5%. We have 10.5%. So suggest whether or not the project should be undertaken under the basis of its expected ARR. Now, the C, I will explain it. The C, when you look at it, using initial cost of equipment to calculate our ARR, the project is not viable, should be rejected, because the expected ARR is below the minimum ARR, which is 6.4%. Is below by 3.6%, so it should not be accepted. But under using average capital employed to calculate our ARR, the project should be accepted. Is acceptable because the expected ARR is 10.5%, which is higher than our minimum ARR, which is 10%, by 0.5%. Now let's talk about a payback period. The payback period. Now, payback period is divided into two. We have two types of payback period. The first one is the payback period without discounted cash flow, while the second one is the discounted payback period. That means before you look at the payback period, you must discount the cash flows of each year. So you are using the discounted cash flow, not the traditional cash flow. Now, payback is measured by cash flows, not profit. It is the length of time before the cash invested in a project will be recovered or payback from the net cash returns from the investment. Now, payback look at, okay, how long will I recoup my money? How long will I recoup the cash I incurred in this particular project, or the expenditure I incurred in this particular project? How long? So with what time is the payback period? So payback period does not look at the entire returns or entire cash flows from the project. Decisions rule for payback period or for payback method. Using payback method, Using payback method, a maximum acceptable payback period is decided as a matter of policy. The expected payback period for the project is calculated. 1. If the expected payback is within the maximum acceptable time limit, the project is acceptable. Before you say a particular project is viable or is acceptable using payback, we must know the maximum time or maximum period the company is expecting to recoup his project, to recoup his project. 2. If the expected payback does not happen until after the maximum acceptable time limit, the project is not acceptable. Now, if the expected payback period that you calculated is not within the maximum time limit the company is expecting to recoup its project, then the project is not acceptable. Payback period does not factor in accounting depreciation as a relevant cost. If you are looking for payback, you don't look at you don't subtract accounting depreciation. So in order to arrive at the payback period, in order to arrive at the payback period. What are the advantages of payback period? 1. It is easy to understand and simple to operate. Payback is easy to understand. You just to calculate the total cash inflows and subtract it from the total amount incurred in that project. Then which year do you recoup the total expenditure? That is very easy to understand. 2. The short-term approach typified by the payback period method reduces the possibility of loss through obsolescence. So because payback period using the shortest period of time, so there will be reduction in possible loss that the company will incur, because you must have recouped your project. You must have recouped the capital expenditure. Time to recoup the capital expenditure before you make loss. So that means you're able to reduce the possibility of loss using payback period. A firm which is short of cash must easily place a premium on quick return of its funds. That means a firm that's short of cash, they have liquidity problem. Payback method is the best approach for such particular company. Payback period method uses project cash flows rather than accounting profit. It uses the project cash flow rather than accounting profit. So this qualifies it to be more precise and objective than accounting rate of return. The payback period uses the accounting profit. So it uses the cash flow rather than accounting profit. That means it does not subtract the depreciation to arrive at its own cash flows. The advantage of payback period. What are the advantages of payback period? One, it ignores all cash flows after the payback period, and so ignores the total cash returns for the project. Because the payback period ignores the cash flow after the payback period, it does not look at it, it ignores it. It's not a good method. So ignores the timing of the cash flows during the payback period. Ignore the timing. So it does not look at it like that the project is going to bring inflows maybe after at the latter days of the project, it ignores those inflows. 3, it ignores the time value of money because it's not discounted. That means it's not discounted. If you discount a particular money or a particular inflows, by saying that inflows that was discounted is a discounted cash flows. It's a discounted cash flows. Now let's look at illustration 2. A company must choose between two projects, project A or project B. It cannot undertake both investments. So you cannot undertake both investments. It must choose between the two projects, the project A or project B. Project A has year zero in project A. You have 80,000 to invest. That means 80,000 to invest in either of the projects, A or B. But the timing of the inflow of project A is from year 1 it will be 20. For project year 2 it will be 36 and 17. For project B it will be 60, 24 and 2,000. The company has a policy that the maximum permissible payback period of the investment is 3 years. Now we are saying for the company says, okay, any project that exceeds 3 years. So any project that the payback period is within 3 years, then is viable. And if a choice has to be made between the two projects, the project with the earlier payback will be chosen. The project with earlier payback will be chosen. Now you are required calculate the payback period for each project. A, assuming the cash flows occur at the year end. I mean, if cash flow occur at the year end, that means you don't look at the monthly or at the beginning of the year. It's at the year end. That means all cash flow will come at the end of each year, which are at December of each year. That means all cash flow has to be taken as once a year at the end of the year. That means you don't prorate it. But B, assuming the cash flows occur after year 0 or constantly throughout the year. That means constantly throughout the year. That means it occurs monthly, it can occur weekly, so it can occur daily. Let's say constantly during the year. So after the project acceptable the project acceptable according to the company's payback rules, which project should be selected? Do you agree that this is the most appropriate investment decision? So let's look at payback period. Now payback period is very easy to calculate. Project A and project B, you look at put the years and put the cash flows. Now look at the cash flows. You look at cumulative cash flows. It means that in year 0, how much we incurred, the cash outflows is 80,000. That's why we jacket it. Now by the time at the end of year 1, we receive 20,000. How much we are left with to recoup is 60,000 for project A. But for project B, at the end of the year 1, after we receive the 60,000, how much we are left with to recoup is 20,000. For project A, for year 2, after we receive 36,000, how much we are left with to recoup is what? 24,000. But for project B, after we receive 24,000 in year 2, then we've already recoup our 20,000. So we have excess of 4,000. That 4,000 that excess is not relevant for cash flow. When we recoup our expenditure is year 2 for project B. I mean, it's after year 2 we recoup our 80,000. Why for project A is after year 3. But year 3 we will not have to recoup another 24,000, which is we will receive extra 36,000. Then we now have an excess of what 12,000 naira. So for project A, the day that we recoup our total expenditure is at the end of what year 3, at the end of year 3. So if you are asked if cash flow occur at the end of each year, for project A we will recoup our project A after year 3. That year 3, that is when we recoup our total, our 25,000 that remain is year 3 that we recoup it. While for project B is at the end of year 2. But if the cash flow is occur throughout the year, then we want to look in which mode which mode are we going to recoup our cash flows, our expenditure, if cash flow is coming at the end of each month. At the end of each month, for project A, if you look at it very well, for project A is at the end of year 2 we are left with 24,000 at the end of year 2. But in year 3, at the end of year 3, we are expected to receive 36,000 naira, which is higher than what we want to recoup. It means that it's year 2 plus we now prorate this we prorate the 36,000. Which particular month are we going to recoup the 24,000? Which particular month are we going to recoup the 24,000? It will now be 24,000, which is the amount that is that we want to recoup over the 36,000, which is the amount we are expecting at the end of that year, times 12 months. It will give us 8 months. So it will be 2 years, 8 months. That is when we recoup our total 80,000. It's after 2 years and 8 months, and when we recoup our total 80,000 without any excess. While project B will be, when you go for project B, you will look at project B. At the end of year 1, we recoup 60,000. We are left with 20,000. But at the end of year 2, we are expected to receive 24,000, which is higher than what we want to recoup. That means it will be year 1 plus, then we will now prorate this 24,000. It will now be 20 over 24,000 times 12 months, which is year 1 and 1 year and 10 months. Now, which project should the company undertake? What is the company policy? The company policy is to take projects within he said the company policy is that the company has the policy that the maximum permissible period for investment is 3 years. It's 3 years. So when you look at both projects, does not both projects, when you look at using when cash flow is coming at the end of each year, you find out that it's only project B that is 2 years, which is below the minimum payback period of the company. But project A is still within. Both of them, they meet the criteria to choose, but we are asked to choose a particular one. But if you are using at end of each year, the best project to undertake is project B, because it's earlier than project A. Project B is 2 years, project A is 3 years. But using if cash flow is coming throughout the year, then we should use project B also. But project B is 1 year and 10 months, which is pay quicker. If an investment decision should not be made on the basis of payback alone, so if you are asked that is it viable, should you use payback period to undertake an investment? No, you don't use only payback period to undertake an investment. You should try and compare payback period with other methods. That is the best way. Don't use only payback, because payback period have its own limitation, which is an advantage in another method. So you don't use only payback period. Now let's talk about discounted cash flows. Discounted cash flow. Maybe our next class we'll talk about. I will explain more of a discounted cash flow. So next class we will explain more from discounted cash flow. Then we'll look at illustration on discounted cash flow. we look at illustration on discounted cash flow. So we are starting from discounted cash flow. So let's understand ARR very well and payback period very well. Let's look at other illustration. Look at other illustration in though our next class I will bring a questions that will talk about ARR and payback period again. So let me explain the meaning of a discounted cash flow and explain time value of money. Also time value of money, we say the money next year, $100 next year is not $100 this year. So time value of money is very very important when it comes to discounted cash flow. I'm going to see us our next class when we start from discounted cash flow. So before the next class you can read it up and understand it, so I can just I will just explain it to then solve more questions on payback period, ARR and discounted cash flow, which is a IRR and a NPV. See you our next class.